but we're talking about spring football. In 7-on-7 spring football, passing camp, pajama day, Bobby King football, they have looked bad. Where I can lie to you and blow smoke up your you-know-what. I prefer to tell the truth.
Welcome back in, everybody, to Thursday's edition of Birds 365. Thank you all for being here this morning. We're about to talk offense, coming off of day 2 of minicamp. John, before we do that, what's the day 3 schedule? Same today, heading down there around noon. I know you're heading down there right after the show. Could probably have to talk to some people, press conferences and such, but what's the schedule for the team and for, when we'll be able to see some action?
Yeah, they moved up practice today a little bit. It's going to be at noon.
Is it supposed to be real hot down there today? Is that why they did that?
I don't know. Might be it was raining. I haven't looked at the forecast. Might have something to do with that. Other than being the last day of school, I said some teams canceled the last day. Eagles are going to go. Probably need to work. They're only going to go 50 minutes, I think. So short practice. Then Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts are going to talk after practice. And they're going to have some players before practice, which is why I'm going to jet out of here as soon as the show is over. But and then there's some other stuff. We'll get Nick in a more extended session that you'll probably hear about later in the summer when training camp comes up. But yeah, big day at the Novacare Complex, final day, and then everybody is about out of what's coming out of that. So be careful coming out of the Novacare Complex. And as I always say to the young Eagles, skip the trip to cheerleaders, just go to the airport.
Yeah, makes sense. They don't move in during minicamp, right? That's more of a training camp thing. You know how everybody sets their locker up and stuff. They don't do that yet.
Their lockers are set up. Yeah. Okay. I mean, they're moved in from that standpoint. No, there's much more pomp and circumstance they have fans, not open, but season ticket holders. I don't know how they do it, the lottery, but there are fans at training camp practices. There are no bands at minicamp practices or anything like that.
Johnny Mac, let's talk offense, and let's start on the bullseye of the offense. Let's start on the most important person on the offense. That's Jalen Hurts. What'd you see from Jalen Hurts in day 2?
Not great. One of the things that has concerned me the most is the uncertainty, and that's not just Jalen, but all the quarterbacks. And again, new offense, new system, new terminology, and especially on 7-on-7s that we talked about. That's a drill where the football should be coming out on time. It's a passing drill, and way too often you see the Eagles quarterbacks holding on to the football, and that to me is a wasted rep. I was talking about this with
it is.
Tim McManus, our buddy from ESPN, and we kind of both said why I would, and Tim said he'd blow the whistle if he were Kellen Moore or Nick Sirianni, because to me it's a wasted rep. Ball comes out, it's practice. Who cares? You're practicing whatever that particular route is designed to do. And, when we talk about that 2.3 second rule that Doug Nussmeier mentioned, or the 2.8 that maybe the Eagles want to get Jalen Hurts back to, that's the way you can do it, in practice. Say, no matter what, just get it out. Now, yeah, people like me, and I think I'm pretty fair, but there are other reporters that'll say, oh, Jalen Hurts had 4 interceptions. He was 9 for 12 and blah, 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 and not understand what they're trying to accomplish at practice. But the Eagles can't worry about that stuff. I hope they don't worry about that stuff. The
I think they
goal is to
do.
get better.
I do. I really think they do.
Sometimes they do. Well, sometimes sometimes they get rabbit ears, but that I know for a fact. But um, they shouldn't. They shouldn't.
Yeah, I'm with you. They definitely shouldn't, but I know they do too as well from my from my experience. But James Carver, thanks for the super chat. I'm going to get to it in just a second. I just want to follow up with John on Jalen. I know maybe there's some indecisiveness or you're learning a new offense. There's new coordinators. I'm not looking for the offense to be perfect at this point. How does he look, though, from a confidence standpoint? How does he look from the ball coming out of his hand? Is he accurate? Is he, is he doing anything that you're like, okay, he looks like he's, getting back to form? Even I'll just point to the New York Jets. You see those videos. Oh, Aaron Rodgers, look at that. I'm not seeing or
That's a
hearing
different animal. That's the guy who, no, he does not look like that. Yeah, he hasn't looked good. I'm sorry. Put all the
You don't
context.
need
I
to
tried.
apologize, Johnny Mac. You're reporting on the team. If he doesn't look good, and that's the truth,
Well,
then that's the truth.
when you criticize the starting quarterback on this team, people lose their minds,
They do,
and you're
but they're
labeled
gonna have
as
to get over that.
everything. Um, from I don't even want to go down that route, but um, look, they're not. And I said the offensive line is key for this team. I would say the key for this team because that's what ships everything. Everybody talks about the playmakers, and the playmakers are
Yeah.
great. AJ, I often say, is the best football player on this team. Devontae's great. Everybody thinks Saquon Barkley's great. Dallas is great. And for all their talent and technique, that this thing runs on the offensive line. And they get better when they're out there leaning on people,
Yeah.
dominating people, play actions involved.
Can't do anything if you don't block people. So I get why they're so important.
And that's where the Eagles offense will start to come together and will start to look better when the offensive line is involved on a daily basis, and they will get better. And they are too talented to be a bad offense. But in the spring, when it's 7-on-7, they've been a bad offense. There's no spin to that, and you can look at any reporter that's been down there.
Oh yeah,
and I
that's
defy
true.
you to find one that has said the offense has looked good. And if they have, they're carrying the water and being a cheerleader.
I want to stay on Jalen Hurts, and we'll talk a little bit more about him. I have a couple other questions on Jalen, but I do want to get to James Carver's $20 super chat. James, thank you as always. We do appreciate when you guys contribute to the show. It does mean a lot. It goes a long way. So we do appreciate your guys' support in the chat as always. We do appreciate it. James says, I have small concerns about offense, but as Xander says, I live in the past with Auburn. James is an Auburn guy. In 10 and 13, Auburn struggled with major offensive coordinator changes and both ended great. And Bama people in 2014 freaked initially when Kiffin left in camp before their trophy. Thoughts, J Mac? Just referring to the new offensive coordinator and if they'll be able to get this thing going and humming in the right direction.
Yeah, I've been very consistent. I think the floor for this offense isn't tremendously low.
What do you think the floor is? They were 8
10,
last year.
top 10,
I
similar.
don't think
That's
top 10 is
probably
good enough, John.
well.
$175 million in offense.
Nobody thinks it's good enough. They didn't think the offense is good enough. That's not what I'm arguing. I'm saying that's the floor.
That's the
And the
floor.
floor in a top 10 offense is good in the NFL. It might not be what people want or expect or think it should be, but it's good. And that's the floor.
Well, let's hope
The
they play above the floor because they got bounced in round 1 by the Bucs last year, playing as a number 8 offense in the league. So,
well, there's a lot of context. The defense missed about 100 million tackles in that game, and AJ wasn't in that game.
Offense still only scored 9 points in the game, so not great on that front.
But they didn't have AJ, and by the way, if they lose AJ, they won't be as explosive, and the floor goes down, as well, because they're not the same team when he's not on the field. So he wasn't available in that game either. But if everybody's out there, it's going to be a good offense. The question is how good. Um, the growing pains should have been expected. We should have made more emphasis on that because it is a big deal in changing terminology and adding elements to the offense and the motion. You're going to see more motion. You're going to see more bunch sets. A lot of people ask how much of Jalen Hurts has been under center. Not much, but it doesn't matter because the offensive line is not involved.
Right.
So, one thing, and it might have been Dallas, somebody was talking about, Kellen Moore likes play action. It's not even involved.
You can't, right? It makes
No.
so it makes sense. There's a lot of stuff naturally missing right now, which you can't practice without it. I mean,
Yeah. So I'm not trying to say it's going to be a bad offense. There's no way this is going to be a bad offense. But we're talking about spring football. In 7-on-7 spring football, passing camp, pajama day, Bobby King football, they have looked bad. Where I can lie to you and blow smoke up your what. I prefer to tell the truth.
John, we will take the truth all day and twice on Sunday. We appreciate you giving the truth and telling us what you saw. One thing I will ask about Jalen Hurts, and Daz in the chat brings up a good point, and he had a question earlier. I'm not going to scroll back and find it, but are you seeing anything that he points to there with leadership on the field with Jalen? I know he's not. I'm not trying to change Jalen Hurts. I know he's more of a subdued, stoic guy, which I think serves him well in some spots. I do. But he is eventually going to have to take the baton of being the leader of the football team. You're the highest paid guy. You're the quarterback. With that comes leadership, comes being a vocal leader, comes connecting with players, comes all of those things. Are you seeing any of that from Jalen Hurts? Are you seeing field leadership? Is he calling out stuff at the line? What are you seeing from Jalen Hurts from that perspective so far? And I'll go back to OTAs too, just in all of the things you've seen this summer.
No, but you're not changing plays at the line of scrimmage in practice. You're not, there's no need to be overwrought in practice. There's no need to turn into Tom Brady throwing a iPad or MS, whatever Microsoft is, ThinkPad.
Pad or whatever the heck.
Well, whatever. They get no pub for what they do, but
yeah, everybody calls it iPad. It's like the worst sponsorship ever.
Yeah, it is.
Their direct competitor is
poor
Apple,
guy.
and everybody's calling
so I try to get it right. I think it's ThinkPad. I try to get it right, but because they do it is the worst.
Surface. It's a Surface. Microsoft
Surface. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. That tells you how much it's working. Anyway, I mean, that stuff doesn't exist again in practice. So, but from your larger standpoint, like he's not changing. He's not changing. Like you wouldn't expect. Well, some people expect, and some people don't like Slay's a personality. A lot of fans don't like it. Some people don't like CJ's personality. It's not changing. And Jalen, they won 29 of 32 games with this stoic Jalen Hurts. He was the best player on the field in Super Bowl 57.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a different time though, John. There was more leaders. You had Jason Kelsey up front. I mean, it's a different feel. As time goes on, he is going to be the guy that has to lead. And I'm with you. I don't want to
by nature, his position includes leadership. But
remember, this was a knock on Carson Wentz too. He's a great quarterback, but there's other things that come with being a quarterback that's not just having talent. And he wasn't very good at that.
Jalen has talked about this in the past. Like everything's fine when you're winning. Everything, like people don't think he's a leader because they lost, 6 of 7 games, whatever. They thought he was a leader before that. He literally didn't change. You know, when you hear new guys come, what's the first thing they say? Almost to a man. When they get asked, "Hey, you got any friends on the team? Anybody contact you?" It's almost always Jalen Hurts first. Goes out of his way to text people, welcome him to the team. Um, he's the same guy. He's always been the same guy, but it's similar to play calling. When I always say my play call, like it, there's multitudes of ways to judge leadership. I don't think leadership is even remotely an issue with Jalen Hurts. If you wanna discuss Jason Kelsey leaving and Jason Kelsey's responsibility for calling out protections and where does that go? Does that go to Cam Jurgens? Does Jalen Hurts got to pick up more of a piece of that pie? All of that stuff to me is legitimate. Leadership, just because you lose a football game doesn't mean you became a bad leader from when you were a good leader.
No,
That
this
to
is
me
where I'm
makes
sorry,
no
John, but I do
sense.
agree. I do disagree on this. Where I think different moments, different circumstances, different things that happen require different action, require different things that you do to handle said situation. I'm not going to be the same person in every situation. I'm not going to do the show today on June 6th the same as I'll do it if the Eagles just won the Super Bowl and we have a show the following day. Like you get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Desperate
but
times call for
I
desperate
think
measures.
people
Like
are different.
you got to be a different guy when sometimes the moment calls for it. I'm not saying you to be a different guy. But I'm saying for you to expand who you are to meet the moment. That's on you as a quarterback. I'd like to see Jalen do a better job of that this year because I don't think he did last year down the stretch.
Yeah, yeah, we disagree on that. He to me is, and I think everybody is the same guy. I don't think people change their personalities. If you do, you're what James McAvoy, the actor, did the movie Split with the split personalities. You got 18 different personalities. You're probably nuts. You,
Yeah,
you,
I get
you
that
got
part of
one
it.
personality,
Yeah, I get that part of it.
and it changes. It doesn't change. You might have um a bad moment in a game where people blame AJ for being emotional on the sidelines, but he's got the same personality all throughout the process. As I mentioned, Slay and CJ and Quinyon Mitchell, being so quiet. People have personalities, and their personalities generally don't change. And they don't change because, and if they do, if you're trying to actively change it to meet a moment, it's probably not going to end well. I mean, execute. Yeah, I to be blatant leadership and stuff like that. It's, and I don't want to say it's not meaningful because guys like Jason and who are, you know, I think it more of just being good people than leadership. Um, and being hard workers and going about your job the right way. I think that's more important. I think that stuff gets kind of way blown out of proportion. Like if you show up and do your job and show the young players how to be a professional as a veteran, um, I think you're a, a really good teammate. Um, and if you're a bad teammate, that shows up in other ways. But when people talk about leadership and it's a sliding scale, and you got to be like Tom Brady this moment, and you got to be stoic this moment, yeah, I think that's way overrated. To put it
Yeah, I get it.
mildly.
I definitely get what you're saying. I don't want people to change who they are. I just, I do think that different moments call for you to be a different version of yourself. I don't want you to be different than yourself, but I do want to see him meet the moment, and we can argue about that at another time. I guess that doesn't matter much on June 6th. John, let's stick on the offense, though. We got about 13 minutes until Bob Brookover joins the show. He's been down there, right? So we'll have a chance. Yeah, so we'll have a chance to talk to him about what he's seen through the mini camp. What else stuck out to you on offense so far, other than it being terribly boring?
And that might be by design as well.
Yeah.
You know, hope to talk to Nick and get more information about that, but they're trying to do some things, and there's been a lot of underneath throws. And when they do push it down the field, it hasn't been great. I thought Will Shipley, if you want to, he, from where he came, you talk about improvement. He looked like he was fighting the football, catching it early when he got here, maybe a little bit nervous trying to fit in. And yesterday at his best practice by a wide margin, and he looked basically bad and almost uncomfortable as a receiver when he first got here. And all of a sudden yesterday, he's making plays, making a diving catch, and looked very comfortable. So that was a positive. Tanner McKee had that one bad second day of voluntary stuff.
Yeah.
He looked really bad, and he's bounced back and looks like himself again. So that's a positive. Kenny Gainwell had a drop. Ed Kratz was making fun of me because I said he's the best receiving back on this team. Just pass catcher.
Eddie K holding you to the
just pass catcher. Need a drop, which is rare, and it shows up when he does. So he made a mistake. Devin White is we're talking offense. Sorry, I was just looking at my notes. And so offensively, yeah, it's Kenny Pickett had some nice throws as well. But the first team is what everyone's concerned about. And he had an opportunity to make Jalen had an opportunity to make a big throw to Dallas Goedert, who got behind the defense, and he threw it over the wrong shoulder. Josh Sweat jumped off sides on one play, and he, for the good of that was Jalen recognized it immediately and took the deep shot because it was a free play to A.J. Brown, but he had a chance to hit it and missed that. So yeah, it hasn't been great. The two biggest plays were probably the dig route to A.J. Brown was the biggest one. It's about 25 yards. Middle of the field, nicely placed ball. And they had right after he missed Dallas, he went back to, might have been the next play, might have been two plays. He hit him on a corner route. And that was a good throw as well. So it's not all terrible, but it's very consistent. Too much holding on to the football. Yeah, it's practice. Ball's got to come out.
Couple targets for Saquon Barkley yesterday, John. I know they were just checkdowns from what I read, but
yeah, the decoy stick
got the day before.
It's funny. They ran a little rub routes, and Saquon finally got a catch. It was with AJ, so that was interesting, but it's a 5-6 yard gain.
That's not a Johnny Mac play. Rub route with AJ and throw the ball to Saquon.
Yeah. And the second target, he didn't catch. But they did these 4 spread receiver sets where Saquon was in the backfield. And he basically, at the snap, basically just ran to the sideline, in a straight line as the outlet receiver, as the 4 receivers go down the field. So it's been mainly a decoy spring for Saquon. But again, I tried to this is not the time for running backs, and there's no play act. That's when he's going to be impactful. When play action becomes a part of this offense and people have to be concerned about him running the football, that's when he's going to be impactful. on this offense and hopefully make things easier for the receivers. And the offensive line's a big part of that as well. And the quarterback, make things easier. That's when you'll get to see what kind of impact Saquon Barkley will have on this offense. But as far as a pass catcher, I would temper your expectations.
John, I wanted to ask you about two other guys on offense before we get to a break here. Bring up Bob Brookover. One being the tight end, Dallas Goedert. I will say all is quiet on the Dallas Goedert front. I haven't heard much about him, haven't talked much about him since I started doing this show with you. Just not a big topic of conversation. That's not a bad thing, but I'm just asking. What have you seen? Are they working him into the offense? Elliott Shore Parks put out there. He looks a lot skinnier and a lot faster this year. Looks like it almost looks like a receiver running routes. What are you seeing from Dallas Goedert?
Yeah, Dallas is great. That's why I think you don't hear a lot of talk about him. He's so consistent. Um, and he's such a constant. My only concerns about Dallas Goedert are injuries and the way he
Yeah,
plays. He plays such a physical brand of football.
that's my
And
kind of football too. I love that physical brand of football.
he's missed multiple games.
Yeah,
And Bob texted me. He's coming on. He said, "Screw it." But now the Eagles have moved things up, so we can only keep him for 20 minutes because he's got to bail because he's got to get
that's
down there.
fine. Maybe we'll get out of here a little early today if we need to, just because I want to
But
make sure you
anyway,
get
yeah,
down there.
doing business with Dallas, it's impressive. One of the most impressive things when the special teams goes out there, Jason Michael, the tight ends coach, just throws footballs to Dallas Goedert. When the special teams guys are doing their work, and he just snatches them out of the air one-handed. It's pretty impressive to watch.
Yeah,
And one time he had one of the trainers put a towel on his one arm to also mimic a defender that might be grabbing at his arm or grabbing at his body and just catching the thing one-handed. He's really a great football player. That's why you never hear people talk about Dallas Goedert.
yeah. Do you think
There's
he'll have a bigger
no
role
issue.
in this offense, though? I mean, I'm not going
No.
to say he didn't have a big role last year, but when you talk about the level of talent that Dallas Goedert has, and I called him overrated on the show one time, and people ripped me for it. And because I see what you mean. He's not overrated because he's a tremendous talent, but I don't think the Eagles use him to the fullest that they could. Maybe that's because they have two
Well,
humongous
that's
wide
the thing.
receivers. But
And
I think he
Dallas.
has. I'm not going to say Travis Kelce, but I think he has George Kittle maybe-esque upside in terms of impact on the passing game. They don't seem to use him that much like that. Part of it is injuries, but I think it could come out a little bit more with Kellen Moore, who's known for spreading the ball around.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Dallas talked yesterday, and I think he mentioned, and maybe it's more of the old offense, and maybe Kellen Moore will um, spread it around more. And to me, that wouldn't be a problem with Dallas Goedert. But he mentioned, he's fine if we got to throw it to, and he used the term 150 times to AJ and Devontae. He's fine with it as long as they're winning games. And those are the two guys. So yeah, he said throw it to AJ and Smitty 150 times each, and that's good with me as long as we're winning. Um, those are the two guys, man. I don't know
Yeah,
what
they
people
are.
get, and Dallas is great at what he does. One of the few real two-way tight ends, old school tight ends. He can play inline, he can play flex, he can block. He's a great receiver. He's a great player, and that's why nobody questions him. The more of the questions at tight end, do they have a second tight end? Nick Sirianni seems to be higher on Grant Calcaterra. Alberto, always tantalizing from a physical perspective. CJ Uzama is the veteran option. Yeah, nobody worries about Dallas Goedert. Just a really good player.
Yep, really good player. Hopefully, he has another good season and can stay healthy all throughout. John, one more question on offense before we get to Bob Brookover, who's about to join us. John Ross appears to be getting a little bit more reps. Is he moving up in the wide receiver depth chart? What have you seen from first round pick and what was it? I don't want to say former. I'm not allowed to say former, but what was he? 2017?
2017.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2017 first round pick. Getting some reps here in
Top
Philadelphia
10
now.
pick. Top
Yeah.
10 pick.
Was it
Yeah. I
number
mean,
nine or number 10?
he's been, he's been very good. I would argue he's been their third best receiver since he got here. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know if that says more about the guys behind him, but he hasn't played a lot. He retired, hasn't played since 2021. Obviously, he had a ton of talent coming in, um, but it didn't work out. A lot of injuries. Talked about some of the dark places he was in because of those injuries, and he seems to be in a much better mental standpoint. Everybody knows he can run. Um, he had a one-handed catch from Kenny Pickett that was pretty impressive. You see some of the rust. He had a chance the other day to catch one on a corner route. He only got 1 foot in, and that's the kind of stuff he'll probably get a little bit better at if he's still here. But I'm not sure that's a good thing. I'm not sure it's a good thing. And maybe